What's up? How's it going? Can you guys hear me? Test one, two. Yo. All right, I'm trying to figure out if I got this going. I think I do. It looks like I am. Can you hear me now? All right, sweet. Well, we'll get rolling then if you guys can hear me, because that's what we're after. All right. All right, so welcome. Gonna try teach a little Tinkercad. This is actually a really easy program for 3D modeling. And yeah, if you need to grab it, it's just open a browser and go to tinkercad.com and sign up. Pretty easy to do. If you guys want to just let me know when you got it and you're ready to go, we will actually just jump in and get going. I'm recording it anyway, so I'll do a playback later on for those who come in late or miss this one. So, what's up, Travis? What's up, Mr. High School Creations? How the heck are you guys? I'll go pretty slow too, so if you got a question, throw it up in the chat. I can see the chat, which is very helpful. And have you guys, has anyone used Tinkercad before? All right, cool. So easy thing with Tinkercad is, uh, there's a big blue button over here at the top upper right, and you just hit new, and we'll say 3D design, and you're right into the program. It looks like it's built for middle school. I think that's actually what they introduced this as, but this actually has some really good functionality to it, and there's actually some advanced features. It's way easier than something like Blender, and once you get like probably 5 or 6 concepts in Tinkercad, you can make almost anything. I've made so many complicated things in this. Um, and then, you take it and you export it as an STL, throw it into Blender, and you can make something look really cool. So, um, and we can get into that too. I can show you guys how to do that so you can take cool shots of the models and stuff you make. But essentially, here you have a work plane down at the bottom. You can go to settings and go to your units. Your units tab is probably set to millimeters. I have mine in inches, so if you want to follow along, you can just switch yours to inches as well. If you're into Legos, you can go to bricks. I won't cover that, and then just make it the default and close that out. And everything, for the most part, shape-wise, is going to be over here on the right. So you have your basic shapes panel, and then you have a drop-down menu that has a bunch of other options in it as well. This is where you're going to select all of your shapes, and we'll start getting into that. But for right now, we'll start with basic shapes, and you have over here on the left, which is kind of important, your different views, your home button. You have this orthographic mode, which is really helpful, especially when you're trying to do stuff that would require math or lining things up. And yeah, we'll get to those. You'll see me use those. If you have a question, like I said, drop it in chat. But if you've used Blender and other CAD systems, you will jump into this pretty easily right away. So big thing is, like I said, everything is a shape, right? Like, so when I'm starting off, I'll look at something and go, oh, this is, a door. I'm going to use a rectangle, and I'm going to use, a circle, and I'm going to use this. I just break it down into shapes. And we'll start doing that by just grabbing your first shape here, which is just a square. And you'll see the menu for this over here on the right that pops up is you have radius, steps, length, width, and height. You can set all of this stuff by either using the drag, the dragger here. You can also just click in there and type too. So we can go 2 by 2 by 0.5 to start off. You can also grab these individual squares and move it that way as well. Corners, etc. We'll drag everything. If you want to enlarge the whole thing, you grab this top one, you hold shift, and you shift up, and it will do it proportionally with everything. Super handy and helpful to know. Right, and so beveling isn't really an easy thing to do in Tinkercad. There's not really a way to bevel unless you're using this particular model, the square. And how you can do that is set your radius, and then use the number of steps. And as you zoom in here, you'll see that we can actually see a small bevel on the sides. So just keep that in mind if you're looking to bevel something. And obviously the bigger the radius, the bigger you'll see your bevel. There's other ways to do that too, obviously, but that's the gist of it. That's how you bring in an object to move it around. You right click, select it, and just right click it, move it around. You have this workspace, which is basically your zero plane, and you can, if you move something up and you want to get it back down to 0, you can just hit this little button over here. Right, when you start seeing these things right here, you got this 5/8, you got 0. You can just start moving this back down, or you can just hit 0 there, take it back down to the floor. The big thing with Tinkercad is Boolean cuts are really easy, but you you don't have many options. At least it doesn't appear to have, you don't appear to have many options. But let's say we wanted to put a square right in the middle of this. You would actually grab this square that looks like it's got the little lines through it, and they call this a hole, I believe. Yeah, just a straight up, just a hole. And it does exactly what you think it would do. If we pull this into the middle, right? And let's say you want to line this up. Let's say like you want this to be dead center in the middle. Just grab both the items, go up to this align button right up here, click on the align button, select your middle, over here, and now we have that baby lined up. The other thing we can do is go to this view, go to our top over here, and we can see that we're totally lined up. To move the screen around without having the angle changed, you can use the middle mouse wheel. That's the easiest way to do it. Or you can also use shift and the left, or the right mouse, excuse me, the right mouse. I just use the middle mouse though. And so let's go ahead and make a hole in this. You can see that we're coming up through the bottom, but I always like to make sure that the cut is gonna really be a true cut all the way through. Pop out of that mode, grab them, and this is how you would make a cut. You go up and you hit the group tool right here. So Control plus G, or just hit group. And there you go. There's our first cut. How's that feel? Any questions on that? All right, cool. We'll just keep going. If you have a question, like I said, just throw it up in chat. Let's go ahead and delete this one. You just click on it and hit delete. And now let's actually make something. So let's make a floor piece, like from a Batcave or Cyberpunk or sci-fi or something. I would start with creating a box. I'd probably yeah, no, totally. Let's move this to 2x2. Again, you can do that by dragging it up to 2, or you can just type it in there, either way. And then let's bring this down to probably like 1/8. And I'll show you a couple ways. Like I said, there's just like every CAD program, there's a million different ways to do this. Just because I do it a certain way doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. It's just how I do it as quick as possible. Honestly, that's my whole thing. Is I've just found the ways that work the fastest for me. But let's say that we want to make this. Actually, I'm going to increase this a little bit. Go back up to 1/4. Let's say we'll make this into a floor panel, and I want the corners to be cut, because there's no way to do that in this program. You have to cut it. So I'm going to bring in this box tool and the box hole, set it there, and these little arrows here are ways to rotate the cube around. So when you want to rotate the cube, you can click it and then get into the you can click into the number, and I could say 45. I get a 45-degree angle that way. Or you can drag it. And if you hold shift, you'll drag it in, like it'll snap to 45 degrees as you go. So, and you can do that for every direction, X, Y, and Z. I'm going to move this back, somewhere around something like this. Let's look at that. That's not very big. One of the problems is right now it's snapping to 1/8, so I can't really get the way that I want it. And if you run into that, you can tell the program to snap in a different scale. So like I can say, hey, let's snap in 1/32. So now you can see when I move it around, I have much more control of how I want that to look. So, and just eyeball it however you want to make it, however you want it to look. And then you want to make sure that, obviously it's centered and all of that, so you get even cuts. But I'm going to go for there, and I'll show you the trick that I use to do this on all four sides. There's two ways to add an object in Tinkercad. You can duplicate it, or you can copy it. If you copy it, it's going to move it to a different location. Like if I control copy this, like Command C and then Control V, it moves it. If I just use Command D, it's going to place it exactly where it was. So I'll do that. I did that once. I'm going to do it again. So there's 3 copies there now. I'm going to do it one more time. And now there's 4 copies there, and I'll show you why. So now I'm going to take, rather than selecting all of it, I'm just going to select one of these cubes. I'm going to hit Shift, and I'm going to select the red panel we have, and then I'm going to group them up here, and we should see that corner disappear. Now I'm going to shift this box rather than messing with all the cubes because it's a little bit easier to control. Now I'm going to take the next box, select the red platform again, and do the same thing. And I'm going to do that again. And one more time. And this time, this way what we've done is we've guaranteed that they're going to be... We've guaranteed that they're going to be the same cut, as we don't have an alignment issue later on. I don't love math, so that's the way that I do it. You can bring the ruler out and get into using the work plane, and I'll show you guys that, but probably down the road. And I know the best way that I learn is just making stuff and then figuring stuff out. So I just want to get you to where you guys can start playing around in this. So now we have this shape, and let's make it interesting. So go ahead and grab or click on this, select it, and then duplicate that, Control D, and we're going to bring it up above, and we're going to turn this into a hole. Now we're going to select this top box, right? So you got, your four sides, 4 corners. This top box is going to let you, make something taller or whatever. But what we want to do here is we want to shrink this whole thing in. And the way to do that is hit Shift and select that box and drag down once till we get something like this. So we go to our top view. Perfect. Now let me jump out of there. Oh, by the way, if you ever get really lost, the home button is really good at just getting you right back. Super handy, especially when you start having, tons and tons of models on your work plane. All right, so now we have this. Let's go ahead and drop this in a little bit. It's kind of difficult to see. That's one of the disadvantages of Tinkercad is you can't really see how far you're going in. You can see it via the numbers. Like you can tell, hey, I'm dropping at 132 because that's what I'm snapping to. So if you want to get it to, where it's right above and you want to snap it in, to 1/4 of an inch, you can always go and change this to, 1/4 of an inch. And then when you drag it down, you're going to drag it down 1/4 of an inch, right? So that's one way to do it. I don't usually do it that way. I do most everything just by eyeballing it. So I just turn this into a hole as well so I can see what I'm doing here from the side like this. And then I just take it down to where I want it. So let's say right there. And then I'll just take this and turn it back to a solid and should be ready to go. Select both of them and group them. And let's say you mess up and for some reason you didn't want to do that. You can use the undo button, but you can also grab the object and just go up here to the ungroup button, and it does the same thing. It just brings it right back one step to where you are. Now, if you have multiple things, like if I've made this cut and another cut and another cut, and I keep hitting ungroup, it's going to keep going backwards and Tinkercad goes pretty far back. I don't know the number of times, but it's pretty far. I think it remembers like 30 moves. So, but anyway, grab those, combine them, and now we got this floor shape. Everybody tracking? All right, let's keep rolling here, and let's say we want to make this like I said, a sci-fi type panel. Uh, Grab another square, and I'm going to shrink this one down quite a bit. We don't need it to be that type of height. And shrink it in to something like this, extend it out. Bring this over to here, lift it up. That's the other thing. The controls are a little bit weird. You can use the arrow keys quite a bit to move things over, right, left, right, and I can even move them north and south. But to go up and down, primarily you're gonna want to use the arrows, and that can be a little bit frustrating at times. But I guess that's what you get for using a junior high program to do all of your 3D modeling. But let's just take this, and another thing I like to do is I don't like really working in red. I like working in one of the grays. So you can select everything, go to solid, and then you can change your color up if you want to. I just see this better for whatever reason. And I'll take this, select both of them, go up here to my align tool, align it in the middle, align it in the middle. I'm going to go back and deselect all those just by clicking on the work plane, grabbing it, holding shift, going 45 degrees, and turning that to the corner. And we have a little X. Now I want to do that again. I'm just going to duplicate that one, Control D. And now I'm just going to mirror this. So there's another tool up here. You can just hit M, or you can click on this guy, and it will show you the different ways you can mirror this, right? So you can go, north, south. You can go X. You can go Y. And obviously here we're just gonna go to the X plane, and we've got that now duplicated. So you should have just an X right now sitting in our shape. The cool thing too is, Mike, I know you're in here. You can CNC route all this stuff as well. I've done it, and it does really well. I don't know which program you use for your your software, but you can throw it as a SVG, export it as SVG or an object file depending on what you need. But grab these guys, and now we got the X. You guys are following along. We're good. I would go and grab another one of these guys. I will this time copy it. So Control C, Control V. Rotate this back so I'm on the same plane, 45, and I'm just going to turn this into a box. Bring it right up in here into the middle. I don't want it to be quite that big, something like that. That'll work. Whatever size you decide to go for. I'm going to grab it. Go ahead and grab the outside object here, and I'm going to align that up to make sure that we're centered. And we are. And then I'm going to combine these. We have done that actually. But I'm only going to combine 3 of these because I want to move them around, and I might want to edit them a little bit later. So I'm going to grab the X, select the left half, the box we just made. It'll tell you up here how many shapes you have that you're going to combine. 3, that's what we want. We combine it. We should see a nice even shape now because they are all flat in the same plane. So you should now have a really cool looking X. And right now, if I 3D printed this, I could 3D print. I could print a bunch of these out, slap them on some foam, and I would have I would have a beginning of a floor. I can grab this, grab everything here, and duplicate it, and just you can kind of see, like, we can just build this thing out. There we go. We're in. And I have built full dioramas in here before, the layout of them with the scale, just to get a visual of, like, oh, is this gonna fit in a DTOF? I don't know. Let me go check. But we're gonna keep going. We're gonna make this cooler. Get rid of these three, and that, and we're gonna grab the cylinder, bring it down. Cylinder has sides and segments. Sides are exactly what you think. If you zoom in here, you can see these kind of have these little segments or sides that make it all up. Just grab it and get it as smooth as possible. You can bevel these. They do pretty well beveled. The more segments you add, the smoother the bevel will be on the top. So, but we don't really need to do any of that. But we'll go ahead and do it. Let's just go ahead and we'll bevel it right about there. And then I want to make these a lot smaller. So I'm going to bring them down and make them a little bit taller. Grab this guy and drag it over and see how much smaller I need to make it. Go into my top view. And you can see I need to make it quite a bit smaller. So we'll do that. Oh, I lost it. Bring it back up here. Here we go. And I can position this now. Oh, maybe. I don't like the way that snaps, so I will change this to 164 and see if I can actually get it lined up. Sometimes it won't. I mean, that's pretty darn close, but sometimes it won't, so you can just turn it off, and then you can go real small measurements there. I like it right there. Another trick is if you're wanting to do and repeat the same thing over and over again, it's easy to do. Select the object, hit duplicate, Control D, then go ahead and move it. So in this case, if you use Shift and one of the arrow keys, it'll go more. So I'm gonna Shift and right arrow key over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know, just a bunch. So it looks right to me. So let's say right there. Now, if I hit Control D again, it's going to go ahead and make the move for me. And I can keep doing that if I want to. So to use the same spacing. So if you ever need to do something that has a pattern to it that you want it to be the same spacing each time, you can use that. You can duplicate it, move it, and then duplicate it over and over from that spot. So for these guys, I'm going to go ahead and move this to the other view. Grab all these, and we're going to turn these into holes. I'm going to grab this one, turn this into holes so I can see how deep we're in here. Grab all those guys, and we're going to move it down a little bit. We want it to be somewhere like that. Turn it back into a solid. And now we can grab, I don't want to grab the X part here, because that's still separated. I want to grab just this. So I should have these 5 plus one more, so I got the 6. I'm going to go ahead and combine those. And now when we spin, we got some holes in there. If you guys are following along, are you with me? Are you where I'm at? All right, I'm gonna assume that you are, or you're grabbing a drink, and we're just gonna keep rolling. I want to make this a little bit more sci-fi looking, so I'm going to grab another square. Put this one right on the plane here. Going to go ahead and size this down somewhere in there, and then make it a little bit more interesting, make it more like a rectangle. Grab the hole, grab the outside object, align this into the center. Oh, I missed. Align it into the center. We'll just eyeball this one. We want to go, well, let's say right about there. And we'll grab the cross this time and group it. And now we have this cutout centerpiece. And I want to add one more little bit to it, maybe two more little bits to it. Grab another box, another whole box. And let's drag this one out a little bit. I don't care what size it is as far as the height. And let's just make this like an internal cut. So I'm going to drag this in and drag it up so it doesn't cut into the actual floor. Something like this. You can kind of see where it's at. We're going to lift it just a little bit. We want it to be. Yeah, remember, we're going to 3D print it, or we're going to carve it. We do want to make sure that we have solid walls. You can make your walls too thin, and you'll kill your 3D print, or you'll mess up your router or your route. So I'm going to grab this. Going to grab the outside object. Going to hit combine, and got a cool little thing in there. And like I said, this if we added this to 3D printer right now and printed this out and we painted it, it would look already pretty decent and pretty sci-fi. Let me know if you get stuck on a spot. I'm happy to go backwards, but yeah. Now here's the cool thing, just to show you guys the difference between this and what I would do if I wanted to show, like, oh hey, I made this cool floor piece. Take it, you can export it. Right, exports this up here in the top right. I'll export it as, here's your option, right? I can 3D print it, or I can send it out as an SVG for laser cutting, but I'm gonna go STL. It's gonna drop down here. Pull this over, and I'm going to open up Blender. Just so you guys can get an idea of what it will look like if it's actually rendered out, or because this doesn't do it justice of what you actually made. It still looks kind of plain and weird and all of that, but it's actually much better than that. Tinkercad doesn't do a good job of showing the object because that's not really what it's made for. But let me import this real fast. Oh, and I made a boo-boo. Yeah, this is good though. I did not combine the whole thing, so I only selected this part. That's not what I wanted to do. So I need to grab all of it, two shapes, group it, then export it. Not a big deal. We'll try that again. port this over. There we go. And here we go. Now we pulled this up in Blender just so you can kind of see. And if I modeled this out, rendered this out, looks very sci-fi. It looks very techy. Move it around, you can see the shadows and stuff a little bit more. So, and if I print this out, which I have, I've made these and printed them lots of times. They look super cool, especially like I said, when you paint them and you weather them any at all. They really stand out. They look sharp. The cool thing about Tinkercad 2 is there's no vertices. There's no. It's really difficult to get like holes and stuff in the model. For 3D printing, that's a real problem, right? Your model has to be waterproof. So you want your model to really not have any holes in it whatsoever. If there's even a small spot that it could take on water, it will fail as a 3D print. So that's the great thing about this is you can throw this into a Chit-U box or Lychee and slice this up and print. And this will probably take about 25 minutes to print. I have no idea how long it would take to actually, to route out or whatever. And the cool thing is if we wanted to shrink this, there's a couple different ways to do it. I mean, you could grab it and you could shrink it. Bring everything down. Right, if you didn't like the thickness of it. It is gonna like change the depth of it though. So if it's just too thick, I would just grab a hole and I would just make it the thickness I wanted it. Obviously leaving some room for that. I'd grab them and slice it. I print both. I've printed this in both a resin printer and I've printed it on my Ender 3. Prints pretty well. In both cases, it prints pretty well. Steve says you can print with either. Yes, you can. And that's the great thing about this program. It doesn't care. It's just going to provide you the STL. There is another menu or another shortcut. If you have something up in the air and you just want to drop it down to the floor, you just hit D and it'll drop it back down to the floor. So if something is manifold, if you follow me on Instagram, I actually get really upset by this topic. Something that is manifold means there are no holes in it. Like, imagine if this was submerged in water. If we took this model and we submerged it in water, as long as there's no possible way for water to get inside of the model, you know it will print correctly. That's called being manifold or waterproof is a good way, just to look at it. Some programs like Blender, it's really easy. No, you're good. This is what I'm here for. I want to teach a man to fish, right? If you are combining, shapes and you're moving shapes around and you have vertices and one of them gets moved to where it no longer connects, even a microscopic amount. And that's the problem with some of those programs is you can have just a corner that doesn't connect and your model has a small, tiny hole in it. It could fail. They don't always fail, but they could fail. And people will sell models like that quite often. And I get hit up pretty regularly. Hey, can you tell me why this model isn't printing? And it's 90% of the time it's because it's not a manifold model. So I will make this panel available. We could do lots of other things too. So like we could go back to where, and let's do it. Why not? We could go back to grabbing this. I could undo what we did before. See where it undid the last step. I really wanted to undo the next step, which is where I combined this little middle section. So I'm going to have to do that again, to ungroup. And there, I think it's where it worked. I just hide this and leave. You can just hit H or the little light bulb here. Hide it. That way, when you need it later, if you want to do the same step, you can still do it. And so now I have this where I can move this out of the way. So let's move this out of the way and let's put a pattern in there. So let's grab a cylinder. Let's ramp up the sides. Let's make it a little bit taller so we can go ahead and hold down shift and bring these down. Let's make these pretty small, and we'll bring them into the model here. Now let's zoom in here just a little bit. Let's say I just wanted to make a cool pattern in here. So let's see, am I actually in the model here? Okay, I am. And I would just kind of like see, okay, we want to probably be something like that. Well, let's say we wanted to make this a cool pattern. I can grab this and let's move it over here. Good starting spot. Again, Control D to duplicate it. Don't deselect it. I'm going to hit Shift and right arrow until this moves over. Nope, not enough. And still not enough. So let's say we want it to be that distance. Now I can grab this, and it didn't work. So because I deselected it a few times, when it duplicated this one, it duplicated it right on top of it. So what I should do is delete that, grab this one again, zoom in, change my angle a little bit, grab this, Control D, this is selected, hit Shift, move it over to where I want it from a spacing standpoint, just like this. Now I can go back, zoom out, move it around, and I can hit Control D, and I have my pattern all the way across. And I can grab all of these little guys by clicking and holding Shift, select them all. You'll see a tiny little black ring that comes around them. And I'm going to combine these. So I have 12 shapes, group them, and now I can move these around. Let's say I want this pattern right here. I can Control duplicate these and move these down now. So let's say there, and move it to the right. Something like that. I can grab undo this. I can grab just this guy right here and duplicate him. Go back in here so I can actually see it again. Move this guy over to say there and do it again. Finish that pattern off. Check that. Probably a little bit over. That's pretty close. And now you can grab all of these again. Oops. Grab all of these again. Sometimes it's hard to snag them all. And then I'd grab this top branch as well. Combine that into its own shape. Now we can duplicate that, move it down to where we want it. Let's say right there, and peel it all the way down. I'm going to select each one of these groups, and I'm going to combine all 7 of the groups. I'm going to go ahead and select the outside box, and I'm going to align these to centers. I will grab this guy right here and move it back over to where he was. We'll drop him down something like right on top of those. Make sure he's lined back up, so we'll do the same thing. We'll align him. Something like that. And then I will clear these out because I don't want them in the middle of this little design element here. Grab those, doesn't matter on the box how far down you have it. Grab this and then grab your little orange circles, combine those, and it should get rid of the ones in the middle. It's taking a little while now because we got some geometry on the work plane, and just give it a second, let it kind of work itself out there. And not perfect, obviously I would move this around and I'd clean up, I'd go in here and add some of this stuff, but if you wanted to add those little markers in there, you certainly could change them to white. And if we wanted to fill these out just a little bit, we could too. Could just move them over to the corner, something like this. Grab them and move them down. There we go. And like I said, if we wanted to lay this out to see what it would look like, we know we have our plane here, our workspace. Move this down and duplicate that. Hit shift while you're moving and it'll move it in a straight line. Grab these guys, duplicate them, do the same thing, shift while you're moving them up. And now if I duplicate, I can continue on. And now we just build a walkway. You guys tracking? Now, obviously, that's somewhat complicated. That's not an easy thing. So we didn't start with like making a window or a door, which we can do and pretty quickly here in 10 minutes. But hopefully, let's see. Travis said I had no idea what you're making, but that's cool for sure. No, that's great. That's how you learn. That's how I learned. I watched a couple of videos and kind of figured out what someone was making. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna turn this into whatever I want. But I mean, if you guys are into making dioramas, and I'm assuming that's you're here to make dioramas or something cool for the your action figure collection, or maybe you're a photographer and you want to make props. This is the program I use 95% of the time for diorama pieces. I use ZBrush when I model head sculpts. I would not ever try to teach that. That's super complicated and organic, and the way that I make them, I don't even know if it's teachable because my process is so janky and backwards. It's just something I developed. But for modeling hard surface stuff, you can make almost anything in this. If we wanted to make a quick door, grab all these. Let me move these aside, and let me just hide these. If I wanted to make a quick door, like and I wanted to show you guys the right way to do it. I grab the ruler, I bring the ruler down. It's a super powerful tool. Drop it in there in the corner. Bring your door in, or your block in. Am I in the wrong view? No. And I'm just gonna eyeball it. But let's say your door is gonna be, like 6 whatever by, something like that. Let's say that's the shape of a door. Um, obviously you're gonna thin this out or whatever. And then you can make a windows. If I wanted to make it windows, I could simply grab, squares, bring the squares over, drag them to, whatever position I had or wanted, duplicate that, line those up to where they were, pretty close. Do the same thing below. I can make a window that way just by cutting it through, or I can grab all 4 of these and raise them up to something like this. Grab my door, and now, bam, what do I have? Now I've got a design door. And adding the other stuff is just as simple, right? So, here's the shape. Obviously, what does that look like? It looks like a doorknob to me. I can grab this and bring this up, bring a cylinder behind it, move this, to in there, scale that right or whatever, and, line these 2 up. If I can actually grab them. And yeah, small electrical box for a warehouse. Other things. Oh yeah, this will totally let you do that. And the cool thing is, play around with some of the stuff they have. Like they have electrical box, right? You, oops, bring this down. They already have some of these pieces. Like, hey, I want the little bolts in the side. Great. You already got the shapes for it. Bring this bad boy in, zoom in there, bring your bolt down to, your corner, something like this. Duplicate it, bring it down, grab both of them, duplicate those, drag them over. You already got you're all started. If you want to add, the box for it, something like that, the door, as long as you know how to use the align tool, line it up, make sure that it's, and, you'll have to make sure you give it enough depth in order to make it look like a door when it 3D prints, because obviously it looks bigger on screen. I'd always say like 1/8 of an inch, something along the lines of that will make that look the way that you want it to. Yeah, there we go. You want to make a hinge, easy to make a hinge. Um, hinge would be just grab something like this and turn it on its side, shrink it down, grab another one of those, pull it on its side, shrink it way down, make it super long. Right, grab those and line them up. Make sure it's lined up in the center of the top. This one, turn this one into a hole. Grab those 2, combine them, and now you have. How do you save a file and start a new one? It's automatically saved. That's the crazy thing about Tinkercad. So If I can leave right now and go up here to the button on the top left, and you can see that it's there. I can hit new one right now. The other thing that's cool is like I have this set to private, and what I can do is if I go back in here and I tinker this and I unhide, well, I guess it automatically unhides that stuff. Grab this door and move it over. Oh, I might get rid of. I'll just go ahead and get rid of this. I can share this with you. So if you guys want this, and I said that I would, do that, give everybody the the files to work with. So pretty easy for me to do that. I just set it to public when I go out here. I go to properties and I can make this public. Go down and hit save changes. And now if you guys search Geek Mechanics, you can tinker in that. You can just say tinker this, and you can go in and snag those files and use them all you want. Like I said, this is the whole point of this, is to try to teach people how to do this. There's no reason almost anyone can use this. My daughter was using this like when she was 6 to make fidget spinners and all kinds of stuff, and it was just super cool to see. Took her, a day or two to really get the hang of it, and then she was just killing it. And you can, like I said, you can make some pretty crazy stuff. On my main account, before I, even was Geek Mechanics or whatever, I've made some really complicated things, and it's just shapes. It's just shapes, and they have some really cool shape makers now. Some of the stuff they didn't have in the beginning. And Steve, do you make dioramas? I'm always fascinated by what people use this for. I started making some dioramas with Chris Gupton, or C Goosey, on Instagram. We made bat caves and all kinds of really cool dioramas, and I use Tinkercad for all of it. So I've made guardrails. Actually, I think everything outside of well, let me just look. If I go to my website real fast and I go to STLs, everything in here outside of these pigeons I made in Tinkercad. All of it. Now, some of it, like I could have made it in Blender, for sure, but it would have taken longer and it would have been way more frustrating to make it in a program like that. So I don't think you ever should overcomplicate something. If you can build, the Doctor Strange door, which is, this model, that's what it is. If you can build that in Tinkercad, why not? So I would encourage you guys just to play around with it, and then, like I said, save it out when you're inside. Um, when you're in the program and you want to save one of these out, just grab it and go to export and export it right out. Yeah, and I don't know how long I'll do these. I don't know if, this is a program that you guys will need like a month's worth of time to really, learn or something, but I'll do it for a little while, as long as it's helpful. And then we can get into some other programs to do a little bit more complicated stuff, like organic type stuff. And sometimes I do make a base of a model in Tinkercad, and then export it as an object file over into Blender to do something very specific in Blender. But a lot of the stuff you can do here, like even texturize, you can even texture stuff in here. Yeah, this is a great tool, and I can't believe it's free. You know, that's the great thing about this is you you just you just it's in a browser anywhere you're at that you have a browser access, and it saves it if you want. And like, say I wanted to bring something else into this. There are other models of Tinkercad out there, so I could go look and say, I don't know, UFO Tinkercad. Let me go to images and see if someone has one. So I don't know. Here's a UFO. That looks cool. I can click it and I can copy and tinker this right now. So I can go ahead and say copy and tinker. As long as it's public, right? And I've got this. I can grab all of this and hit Control Copy. Go back to Tinkercad. There it is in my files now, right? Or I can also just bring the part into the part I was working on by Control V. So if that fits in to something I'm making, you can bring it in. And the cool thing about it is it's not like, Blender where someone would be like, hey, you use my X, Y, and Z. It's like, it's the whole point of this. Tinkercad is learning and using stuff. And if someone makes it public, then they don't mind if you use it. But yeah, that's how you do that. So you can do textures that way too. Like, let's say you want a rock texture. Obviously Tinkercad does not have a rock texture, but you can go find an object file or an STL file that has a texture on it just by Googling it, finding it, bringing it in, and doing like turning it into a hole, inverting it into your shape, and cutting it. And I've done that plenty of times as well. So. Well, I appreciate that. That's the goal. Is just like I said, really just want to make this where people can make cool stuff for their collection, and I'm happy to answer any question. If you have any questions, you can hit me up, DM me on Instagram. I'm happy to answer them there too. So, with that, you guys now you can grab these files if you want them. If you 3D print them. Tag me, but not to give me recognition. I just want to see what you make because I love looking at what other people are able to do with the same stuff. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys stopping in. And like I said, if I can help you out in any other way, hit me up, DM me on Instagram. But I will probably do this again next Wednesday, and I'll see you guys then.